Hello and welcome to another episode of our Women in STEM series. My name is Kaylee Peile, and I'm the Director of Development for the Linda Hall Library. Today, our guest is Kellyann Jones-Jamtgaard. She's a National Program Leader for USDA. Kellyann, welcome and thanks for
Thank
being here.
you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So first, let's define what a National Program Leader is. Can you give kind of a snapshot around your role within the USDA? What do you do?
Sure. So I work at our National Institute of Food and Agriculture. We're one of over 20 agencies that are within the USDA umbrella. And so our main purpose as NIFA is we are the extramural funding arm of USDA. So all the money that we get in through congressional appropriations, most of it goes back out in the form of grants to our constituents and stakeholders. And so as a national program leader, I'm the one that's kind of in charge of some of our grant programs. And so I'm in our Division of Community and Education, and so I lead grant programs focused on K-14 education as well as education at minority serving institutions. So within my portfolio, I have grants that work on K-14 teacher professional development, so helping teachers teach the next generation food and ag sciences, as well as a portfolio that includes our Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian serving institutions. So those are primarily universities in Alaska and Hawaii, as well as the insular areas, and those are the 8 commonwealths, territories, and other sovereign nations in the Pacific and the Caribbean.
That's a really important role. So thank you for defining that. So tell me what led you to this point in your career. Can you talk a little bit about your background? What did you do whenever you're going to school? I know you've got a PhD, and both your undergrad and your graduate degrees are around biology and microbiology. So can you kind of tell me the journey that got you to this point?
Yeah, and I would say that kind of where I am now at the USDA and NIFA is definitely an alternative career path. I don't think if you'd asked college age Kellyann or even grad school age Kellyann, like, do you think you'd be doing this now? I probably would have said no. I don't think this would have even been on my radar back then. So I always loved science as a kid, kind of probably similar to other interviews I've had, really interested. My parents, really nurtured that love of science and found me all sorts of opportunities to take part in. So I started doing lab research as a high school student.
Wow.
In a kind of summer enrichment program for students of color who are interested in science. And so I got to kind of go all over the country working in labs at various universities, starting kind of the summer before my freshman year in high school.
Okay.
So by the time I got through high school, I kind of knew I loved the lab. I think lab work is what I want to do for my future career. And so when I went into college at Duke University, went in as a biology major and knew I wanted to do research, but didn't really have a good grasp of like what type of science do I want to do. And it wasn't until junior year when I took my first microbiology class and kind of sitting there in the lecture hall, I'm like, okay, this is it. Bacteria are really cool. Viruses are really cool. This is what I want to, spend the rest of my life working on and answering questions and helping improve people's health because of the toll infectious diseases, take. And so that's when I kind of knew the area of science that I wanted to go into and kept taking courses in microbiology, did research in a microbiology lab. And then after undergrad, I did a year at the National Institute of Health. I worked in the National Cancer Institute there. And that kind of just helped me kind of solidify I can do research for more than just a summer and be happy doing it. That was a year-long program. And again, I still loved it, applied for graduate school during that time, and I ended up doing my PhD at the University of Kansas Medical Center in microbiology. So I studied hepatitis C virus, and how things move within cells, how the virus disrupts that movement within cells. And it wasn't until during graduate school when I was starting to think, okay, what's my next step? The traditional step is you go do a postdoctoral fellowship and then you go be a professor somewhere. And I was like, you know what? I'm not sure that's for me. I love research, but I don't necessarily think I want to be the principal investigator of a lab, kind of basically doing what my mentor did. I was like, I don't think this is the job for me. And so I started looking into the different careers that were available for people with PhDs. And science policy kind of struck me as an area that seemed really interesting. Seemed like we needed more people with science backgrounds helping develop policy and kind of shaping what the scientific enterprise in the United States looks like. And also an area where we needed more voices of women, people of color to kind of shape who does science in this country, what that looks like, and who has access. And so I was kind of looking at opportunities in science policy. And of course, you can work for the government, you can work for nonprofit groups. And I always thought, I can't do this unless I can get to DC eventually. And so I worked for a nonprofit, Prep KC, for a little while, doing kind of on the ground with the students and teachers in K-12, helping the teachers teach science, helping the students get experiential learning opportunities in science, so field trips, internship opportunities, and it was wonderful. I loved seeing how they lit up and the excitement in their faces to know that, oh, this is something I can do. This is for me. It's not just, what I've seen on TV or the, older adults that I see working labs. I can be this person one day. So in 2019, 2 USDA agencies moved to Kansas City as part of a relocation effort, and they were hiring locally. And I was like, this is my chance. I can work for the federal government. So I applied to NIFA and was originally started as a program specialist, and then moved up to national program leader. And what's interesting is people ask, like, oh, so you must have been a food scientist or did a PhD in agriculture. And it's like, no, microbiology. And they're like, oh, animals. I'm like, no, human health, which is not really, that's not what we fund. And a lot of people at NIFA have backgrounds in food and ag sciences. And for me, it was because I had that experience working with students and building programs. And I also speak Spanish as well. And so they were looking for people who could work in their minority serving institutions portfolio and understand kind of creating more diverse workforce. So that's how I ended up at NIFA, even without a food and ag background. And it's been a wonderful experience so far. I love getting to give money to really deserving projects and really, know that taxpayer dollars are going to very meritorious things that are really going to change the face of food and ag sciences and what those scientists look like in the future, and also supporting institutions in, as far away as Palau in the Pacific, and as close as Alaska, Hawaii, and being able to do the types of research and education that they need to support their students, and sometimes in resource-constrained environments. So it's been really valuable to be part of an organization with such a great mission.
I love that. Thank you for telling that story. I think that's really important. And I think it's important for young people in any community to understand that if they're going to pursue a degree in STEM, it can be nonlinear, and there are a lot of different options. I mean, your point of you didn't know even how you could break into something like that, but here you are, and all of your experiences have laddered up to that. Whether or not you were being intentional whenever you were an undergrad, it's led you to this point. So that's really, really wonderful. And your experiences, I think, are probably, you have a different lens and a different way to look at a lot of the problems that maybe some of your counterparts don't because of your degree and your background. So that's awesome. So tell me a little bit about the USDA's efforts when it comes to being more intentional with disenfranchised communities. What are they doing to really support women, diverse populations, and things like that in your role, but also kind of across the board?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that drew me to working for a department like USDA is, so the nickname for USDA is the People's Department.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and it was one of the first things I learned when I started working there.
Wow.
And it really does, I think, fits with the organization, and I think fits with what we're trying to do every day. We're trying to take the knowledge that is gained at the university level or other organizations and bring it to the people, the farmers, the ranchers, the other stakeholders that can utilize that knowledge to make a great impact on the ground. And I feel like NIFA really lives that mission, and I think that's why I'm really excited to be a part of the organization. And so I think we're really intentional as far as the grant programs that we have. So we have, besides the ones I mentioned with Alaska Native and Native Hawaiian serving institutions and Insular, we also have programs that are focused on other minority serving institutions, like our Hispanic serving institutions, our 1890s institutions, which are the historically black colleges and universities that are land grants, as well as our 1994s, which are our tribal colleges that are land grants. And so we have dedicated portfolios to all of these types of schools to funnel resources to the students who need them at those institutions. And then I think even for our programming that doesn't necessarily have that is focused necessarily at minority serving institutions or women, particularly, we get so many projects that are around those areas, and folks at universities and nonprofits and other institutions who want to serve disenfranchised communities within their states or regions, that we're able to fund lots of meritorious programs that are contributing to diversity in food and ag sciences through our various grant programs. So it's not just, our programs targeted at minority serving institutions, but it's, I think, across the agency, within any of our grant programs, you can find those projects that are dealing with marginalized communities and working to empower them and to bring resources to those communities and to kind of help others learn from those projects and kind of spread the best models of how to do that around the country and, internationally as well. And so I think that, other programs at NIFA, not just, looking at women in food and ag sciences or minorities in food and ag sciences, but we also have programs that are, looking at rural communities, which are really important for USDA. Also programs looking at helping military veterans when they come back and who may want to do farming as a career. Beginning farmers and ranchers, who a lot of times are those from disenfranchised groups, getting the skills and training they need. So I think it's very much across the board. NIFA is putting dollars and resources in lots of different communities that need them, even through directed programs, but also efforts that are not directed.
So it sounds like a more holistic approach, which is important when you're doing that kind of work. Is there something, or are there a few things, I'm sure, that NIFA and the programs that you guys are implementing, are there things that you wish that were happening more in the community, or ways that might make your job easier or those programs more impactful?
I think one way that we could be more impactful is being able to disseminate what we're doing in ways that are more accessible to people. So because we're, the research that we're funding and education programs we're funding are through taxpayer dollars, all of that information is publicly available. Sure. But it's, on a government website. I would say most people who work with us don't even really know where to go to find the information because, it's, you have to do complicated searches to find what you're looking for, and it's not always the easiest unless, you're a government employee who knows what they're looking for. So I think that's one area that we could do better in, is disseminating the information and kind of empowering our grantees to disseminate that information, and also do a better job of, collating that information over time. Because in a lot of our grant programs, they've been going on 20 plus years, some of them. And so that's a whole wealth of information of, what hasn't worked very well, what's worked really well and could be a really great model for other institutions who have similar profiles. And so I think if we could do a better job of getting that information out, and in a way that's easily digestible and accessible to folks, that could help spread what we're doing even further.
Yeah, that makes sense, kind of meeting people where they are. Yeah, that totally makes sense. I'm tracking. Let's back up a little bit, though, to your experience as a woman in STEM more specifically. So starting, you're more in a mid-level portion of your career now. What has the landscape been like as a woman of color in microbiology and biology, and has that changed over time? In your experience?
Yeah, and I do think it's changed, and I think it's changed for the better.
Good.
I think that, I've been really blessed, I think, throughout my career to have women mentors that have been able to, both white women as well as women of color, that have been able to kind of blaze a trail and then look back and take people with them. Yep. So I've always had people that I think I've been able to lean on to navigate getting through grad school, as a woman of color, after that, I'm wanting to start a family as someone in science, and kind of navigating that path and how to work-life balance and all of those issues that come up a lot of times. So I've been really grateful for those mentors who have provided support. And I think also, especially when you look at non-academic careers, there are a lot of women in those fields. So even at USDA and at NIFA, I work with tons of other national program leaders that are women. We have a lot of women in our leadership. Our second in command at NIFA is a woman who started as a program specialist and worked her way up to being, at one point, the acting director of the agency, and she's a Black woman. So that's pretty amazing. That's awesome. We have lots of examples, I think, within our agency of successful women and women of color. So I think that, for me, I've definitely seen an increase, more visibility for sure. And I think, now that I'm kind of mid-level in my career, it's definitely been heartening to have women reach out to me who are in the early stages of their career and ask for advice. Say like, hey, I noticed you do X, Y, Z. It's something I'm interested in. Can can we have a chat? Can we have grab some coffee? And so it's been really nice to kind of see that continuum of being the person asking for help and getting that help to move up in my career, and now being able to kind of give back to those who are coming up after me.
Yeah, it feels really good to be able to get to a position where you can kind of pay it forward.
Yes.
I'm in that position too, and I totally resonate with that. Well, what are ways, so obviously there's been a trajectory of growth and impact in a good way for women and people of color in these fields, but what are things that you're excited about in the near future for women and people of color, and are there things that we could be improving on, both, from a Kansas City perspective, but a national and international perspective?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I wanted to mention that I've been really proud of at NIFA is we just launched a program about a year ago that I was involved with called the NextGen Program. And it's a $250 million investment in the next generation of food and ag scientists. And that call went out specifically to minority serving institutions. So at the end, we were able to fund over 30 projects at minority-serving institutions in the United States, Alaska, Hawaii, and the Pacific, and Puerto Rico, to basically we estimate that it'll probably touch 20,000 or more students over the lifetime of these 5-year projects.
Wow.
And so these are students who are at these institutions who are getting exposed to what a career in food and ag sciences looks like, the breadth of careers. Because again, it's one of those things when especially early in your career, you think of food and ag. What do you think of? Probably a farmer,
Yep.
maybe, a food scientist. But there's tons of different careers that are available. And I think so they're going to get exposure to that. They're going to get internship opportunities, more coursework. So I'm really excited that we were able to make that investment. And, we're basically going to lift up these students, and that we're going to get so many best practices of what worked well that's going to be able to kind of serve as models for other institutions across the country. So that I think has been really exciting, specifically for USDA and NIFA. And I think more generally, I think the visibility has just been amazing, just kind of when I started out in college and to now. I mean, you think of a scientist, you think of, these different careers in science. You can probably name a woman, you could probably name a person of color. And so I think that's pretty amazing. I think here in Kansas City, we're a very philanthropic community. And I think that I've seen so many organizations take up that mantle of, we're going to work with marginalized communities and we're going to invest in them and we're going to empower them, especially in the life sciences, and there's just so many opportunities here for that. And so I think it's a really great hub for life sciences, food and ag sciences now that we have a USDA headquarters here as well, and just lots of opportunities that students can be exposed to early on.
I totally agree. The library is doing a lot of that too, and I think it's kind of like a full court press for all of us kind of linking arms to do this work, but I'm also optimistic. I think there's a lot of really good things ahead for the next generation of leaders and doers, and I'm really thrilled to know that you and is it the People's Department?
Yes.
You and the People's Department are going to be doing a lot of that work, so thank you. And thank you for sharing information about you and the USDA, and I'm really glad that we got to chat, so thanks for the time.
Of course, thank you.